What's goody? You already know what time it is, my people. How y'all been doing? How y'all been doing, man? I hope you guys have been good. I hope you guys have been okay. And I hope you guys have been gaining in the pursuit of knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, baby. You know? Whether the days are rough, whether the days are smooth, whether the days are sunny or dark, I just hope you guys have, like, maintained the strength to keep up this journey. You feel me? I got I got an article here um, about this organization, this entity called the Club of Rome. The Club of Rome, which was started by a Maurice Strong and a David Rockefeller. And I'm sure some of the guys that are listening should know about the Rockefeller family. You know, that bloodline that originates from Austria, that currently oversee a lot of what goes on in this world in terms of media, banking, religion, pop culture, I would say. I haven't had an idea for a title of this video yet, but this article, or more so what I want to touch on concerning this article, is a little bit of depopulation, a little bit of the people or the powers that be that overrule us without us knowing, and about just a little bit about of how these people or these families that rule are Satanists. You know, they always have a Luciferian agenda concerning the way they wish to shape society or the way they wish to manifest society into their Satanist agenda. So we're gonna go into this article talking about the occultic roots within the Club of Rome's climate agenda. So it starts off: global environmentalism is a dangerous cult whose claims of apocalypse and of the efficacy of the solutions technology presents are as fantastical as the beliefs which inspire them. The evidence for the influence of occultism over the global environmental movement begins with the man who is credited with founding it, Maurice Strong. Maurice Strong was a Canadian oilman, a rich entrepreneur whose involvement with the Club of Rome saw him rise to promote a worldwide green agenda based on fantasy, misanthropy, and the deliberate manipulation of public sentiment. He led the United Nations Environment Program and later the World Economic Foundation. The mastermind behind the 1992 Rio Earth Summit, he is credited with the creation of the phrase climate change. I did not know that actually, that he coined that term. A biography on his own website proudly claims that Strong has played a unique and critical role in globalizing the environmental movement. What is the Club of Rome? The Club of Rome was founded at David Rockefeller's estate in Bellagio in 1968. Towards the end of his life, Rockefeller responded in the affirmative to a charge that he and his family were seeking the establishment of a world government. Some even believe we are a part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalists, and of conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure. One world, if you will. If that's the charge, I stand guilty and I am proud of it. Well, coming from the horse's mouth himself. Alright, the Club of Rome promotes a planetary agenda of technocratic control. It has described the collapse of industrial society and the death by starvation of 2/3 of the human population as beneficial. How can it be that this is not common knowledge? Rockefeller explained in his memoirs that such a project would have been impossible without the collusion of the press. And I just want to pause right here and say two things. We see elements of depopulation, right? And this is what a lot of these guys, like Bill Gates and the billionaires in this world, vouch for or proudly support. They support that in order way to spare the earth or to save the earth is to kill 2/3 of the human population. Now, how that can occur, I've made videos about this before. It could be through disease, it could be through climate control. They have technologies and devices that can control or change the weather. They could cause a snowstorm for months, which would freeze out most of the world's food supplies, and would kill off people. They could do this through disease. COVID was just a test. There's more to come in terms of disease, in terms of illnesses. It could also be because of food shortages. They sabotage boats, trains, carriers that carry foods across nations to nations, which overall, cause a food shortage. It could be electrical outages. It could be wars. We're on the verge of World War III already. Who's to say that a great depopulation will not come then? And so the second thing I wanted to touch was the Rockefeller and him saying that a project like this would be impossible without the collusion of the press. The Rockefeller bloodline, they control media, they control press, they control television, they control music, they control movies, films, anything that we expose our eyes to on screen. The Rockefeller is behind it. And how they do this is through funding. They are, personally, I believe they're not even a billionaire family. They're a trillionaire family. These are people that live beyond financial concept. They exist. They live beyond money. They have means of wealth which are beyond our comprehension. They're not just billionaires. They're trillionaires and beyond. They own mines, they own land, they own ranches, they own resources, they own factories, they own anything that you name, and for those of you that don't know, it's families like this that God refers to within the scriptures. Like, for example, the Rothschild. God refers to them in the book of Revelation as the red shield or the red dragon. The word Rothschild literally means red shield. So the article continues. We are grateful to the Washington Post, the New York Times, Time Magazine, and other great publications whose directors have attended our meetings and respected their promise of discretion for almost 40 years. It would almost have been impossible for us to develop our plan for the world if we had been subjected to the light of publicity during those years. But the world is more sophisticated and prepared to march toward a world government. The supranational sovereignty of an intellectual elite and world bankers is surely preferable in the national autodetermination practiced in past centuries. The fruits of Rockefeller's garden. The club which Rockefeller founded and hosted was led by a man called Aurelio Peche, or Pesce, forgive my pronunciation, whom with Alexander King, a Scottish head of science, and the OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, convened a meeting of European scientists in Rome. These two men commissioned a computer model to predict the forthcoming collapse of the industrial civilization due to overpopulation. The model was wrong, but this did not deter them from publishing in 1972 a manifesto for a new Malthusian agenda of depopulation based on a model that was incorrect over decades ago, and they're still carrying out this model for depopulation, sourcing some of their findings or sourcing some of their inspiration from this model. Evil people, bro. Evil people. They don't want to depopulate the earth for the sake of betterment and for the sake of survivability. They want to populate the earth because they believe that there's too many people in it, that they believe that there's too many slaves in it. Less people means smaller armies, smaller revolutions, and smaller resistance. These two men commissioned a computer model called The Limits to Growth. It inspired much of the green agenda of the deindustrialization, abortion, and the concept of humanity as a problem to be solved. The book continues to inspire a movement whose agenda has always relied on the deliberate distortion of reality. The Club of Rome, in its 1991 report, The First Global Revolution, states, "In searching for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine, and the like would fit the bill. All these dangers are caused by human intervention, and it is only through changed attitudes and behavior that they can overcome. The real enemy, then, is humanity itself." The co-founder of the Club of Rome, Aurelio Peccei, was an occultist who made no secret of his devotion to the cult of theosophy, as noted Finnish epidemiologist Mikko Parnio notes. Peccei announced his views in print in 1977. Aurelio Peccei's 1977 book, The Quality of Man, reveals his worldview based on theosophy and the discovery of the inner self. The organization, which was foundational to the global environmental movement, was formed, therefore, by a man inspired by the fraudulent cult of theosophy. 3 elements of a revolutionary cult. The cult of climate change and the general green agenda is often presented as vanguard of reason, the claims of which rest on settled science. In fact, it is a curious blend of fantasy and fetish. The leaders were inspired by make and believe and saw in science and technology an instrument of control and persuasion, which could deliver to their managerial elite a future society granting unlimited power to the masters of the future. The models are convenient fictions that provide something very useful. Dr. David Frame, Climate Modeler, Oxford University. Global environmentalism is a dangerous cult whose claims of apocalypse and of the efficacy of the solutions technology presents are as fantastical as the beliefs which inspire them. It is a revolutionary movement and describes itself as such. It is a fusion of New Age beliefs, technology worship, and personal vanity. There's also a great deal of money to be made. Alright, Maurice Strong and the Club of Rome. Maurice Strong fantasized about causing the collapse of industrial society during an interview in 1990 titled The Wizard of Boca Grande. It took place on his extensive New Age compound in Colorado. Speaking to writer Daniel Wood, Strong asked, what if a small group of world leaders were to conclude that the principal risk to the earth comes from the actions of the rich countries? Who made these people? Who appointed these people as principals of the earth? Who appointed these people as world leaders? Nobody voted for them to be world leaders, They're just arrogant, arrogant people who believe in themselves, arrogant people who believe in the stench of their own shit, So in order to save the planet, the group decides, isn't the only hope for the planet that the industrialized civilizations collapse? Isn't it our responsibility to bring that about, to bring about death and destruction? Strong was influential in the Club of Rome, moving on to lead the newly minted United Nations Environment Program and to chair the Rio Earth Summit. He was a founding member of the World Economic Forum, whose foundation he went on to lead. His obituaries celebrate his commitment to globalizing the environmental movement. This is an issue which has attracted much attention before, but with the recent work of Finnish scientist Mikko Parnio, the existence of a nature pantheist cult at the center of the environmental movement is difficult to disclaim. Parnio recently featured in an interview with LifeSite News John Henry Weston to discuss when he calls the existence of a nature pantheist. To close the article, to conclude this segment of the video, esoteric futurism and the problem of humanity. Claims of occult influence are dismissed by mainstream sources on the grounds that Maurice Strong and Aurelio Peccei did not practice rituals in some sort of temple. This is not the basis of the argument. What matters is the inspiration for an ideology which, without the cutty green window dressing, remains open about its definition of humanity as the enemy. There is no argument that Strong, Pesci, and their organizations were indeed inspired in part by the influences drawn from the occult tradition of theosophy. This is a means of making man a god through the cultivation of the inner self to the point of a Gnostic awakening. He was cosmic in his outlook, saying, I believe the great frontier of the future is the frontier between the individual spirit and the spirit of the cosmos. He built a new age compound in which to live, believing with his wife that his sentiment of crystal green and mystics such as Shirley MacLaine was a blueprint for a post-apocalyptic culture. Look beyond the bizarre nature of his living arrangements and marvel at the mind of anyone who believes their own fantasy world is a scalable model for the worldwide human society. It is only through fantasy that such things seem possible at all. What these fantasies betray is the vanity of the fantasist. They are appointed, chosen in a sense, as was Strong, by the burning of a bush. Personal fantasy as a route to power is the central point. This is a means of reassessing the seemingly suicidal environmental movement as a large-scale instrument to enact the private desires of a very small number of people. All right, and the rest of the article is just hubbub, things that aren't really relevant to what I'm speaking about. However, there is something that they talked about in this article, and that was theosophy. They stated that Maurice, along with David Rockefeller, they were theosophists, or they believed in the religion of theosophy. And that's what I want to show you right now, what this theosophy is in essence. Of course, you know me, I always bring this about. It's Luciferianism. Theosophy is Luciferianism. It is Satanism, masked in spirituality and masked in people believing that they are connecting to the spirit world. They ain't connecting to nothing but demonism. So I'm going to just touch on this real quick. Theosophy is a religious movement established in the United States in the late 19th century. Founded primarily by the Russian Helena Blavatsky and based largely on her writings. It draws heavily from both older European philosophies, such as Neoplatonism, and Indian religions, such as Hinduism and Buddhism, more paganism. Although many adherents maintain that theosophy is not a religion, it is variably categorized by religious scholars as both a new religious movement and a form of occultism from within Western esotericism. I don't want to get into the rest of this article. Honestly, I think I'll probably make another video concerning theosophy and Helena Blavatsky, and probably title it under the Pagan Chronicles. But more to theosophy, I want you guys to look at this image right here, the symbolism or the mark of theosophy. And if any of you guys are paying attention to any of my videos before, all of this right here, these are symbols that I've touched on in my videos before, especially under the Pagan Chronicles. These are just symbols put together. First, we have the world-eating serpent, the never-ending serpent, the world-consuming serpent, and that represents the Luciferianism in this world, and how it just evolves and circuits the earth. It's in all corners of the earth. Secondly, we have what claims to be the Nazi symbol. I forgot what it's called originally, but it's a Chinese symbol, and it basically means the sun. It's sun worship. It represents the sun. We have the two pyramids facing opposite of each other, or the seal of David of the tribe of Judah, the king of Israel. But more so, it's two pyramids facing opposite, as above, so below. And then lastly, we have the Egyptian Ankh. This is just a symbol used in Egyptian Hermeticism, or in the mystery, or one of the Egyptian mysteries. And within the Ankh is a cross and a circle which represents the female, which represents the male phallus and the female womb. This is just devil worship, all of this. All right, lastly but not least, I would like to also just elaborate just a little bit on the Rockefeller bloodline and his ties with Maurice Strong. All right, so before I begin, I extracted this information from a book which I found literally on the CIA government library. This is completely accessible information. I did not need a password to go into this to log in, to check the CIA library. It is open, and any one of you brothers could look in to their library and find these books for yourselves. All right, the Rockefeller bloodline. One of the 13 satanic bloodlines that rule the world is the Rockefeller bloodline. Today, there are around 190 members of this family with the Rockefeller name, and of course, others by other last names. This article is to explain or explore further for those who investigate the Illuminati how the Rockefeller bloodline is involved in the promotion of the occult and Satanism, and how they are involved in the control of the Christian denominations. This article keys in on just one family, the Rockefellers. To understand the full extent of the Illuminati's control of religion, including Christendom, would require perhaps several books. All right, so the Rockefellers, they have hidden trusts within secret trusts, within other secret trusts. It is estimated that they have between 200 and several thousand trusts and foundations. The finances of the Rockefellers are so well covered that Nelson Rockefeller did not pay 1 cent in income taxes in 1970, yet he was perhaps the richest man in the U.S. The Rockefellers extort an enormous influence over religion in this nation in the following ways. They provide a large share of the money that seminaries in the United States need to operate. They provide a large share of the money that universities need to operate. Education influences the religious values of our people. They provide large grants to various religious organizations. Their influence and control helps determine who will get publicity in the major news magazines and on televisions. You see that? You see that? So a lot of the idols that you see on TV, they're backed by such families, whether it be the DuPonts, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, It could be any of these families, man. Best believe they're being backed by one of these Jew families. Their influence has contributed to various anti-Christian organizations being set up. They directly help control certain religious groups such as Lucis Trust. Their influence has contributed to the various anti-Christian organizations being set up. Maurice Strong is a good friend, and this is the Maurice Strong, the same Maurice Strong who founded the Club of Rome. Maurice Strong is a good friend of the Rockefellers. He has been promoting Mother Gaia worship. David Rockefeller works with Maurice Strong and his New Age ideas. Reverend Moon from Korea has been very much loved by the Rockefellers. Moon calls himself Christ and is setting up a religion promoting internationalism. His religion is also a good testing ground for brainwashing, recruiting techniques that are being perfected by the NWO, and include Ted Kennedy, Mason Mark Hadfield Mason, Jesse Helms, and Illuminatus William F. Bucky Jr. They were founded in 1956, just like Reverend Moon. They claim to be Christians, but teach and practice the other things. They teach and practice the occult. The two prominent men in SFF are Marcus Bach and Gardner Murphy. They both have interesting backgrounds. Marcus Bach shows the touch of the Rockefellers. Marcus Bach, born in 1906, is director of special projects for SFF. The Rockefeller Foundation granted him a fellowship in research and creative writing from 1934 and 36. Gardner Murphy was the consultant in 1950 for UNESCO in New Delhi to the Hindus of the Indian Ministry of Education. From 1952 to 68, he was director of research at the Menninger Foundation. Topeka, KS. Yes, psychology is led mainly by occultists. Menninger himself is a member of several environmental groups for the elite an honorary trustee of the Aspen Institute, a Freemason member of ACLU, and a close associate of W. Clement Stone. W. Clement Stone, in turn, is also a member of the occult, American Society for Physical Research, and the financial backer of the Menninger Foundation. The Federal Council of Churches was financed to a large extent by Rockefeller money. In my Be Wise as Serpents book, I detail how the FCC was designed to destroy Christianity, how they carefully plotted to make the creation of the FCC look like a grassroots movement, when it was actually the creation of the elite. I further detail how the men who ran it were high-ranking Masons, socialists, and one-worlders. Also shown is how they carefully manipulated the real gospel for their own devious ends. And these are the people that we're against, man. These are the principalities that we're against. For the fight is not in the flesh, it's in the spirit. These guys, they're the Luciferians, the Satanists, man. They summon and talk to demons, man, that inspire them to spread or manifest their filth in the world, And it is better to know about them and to know their ways and their tricks, so that when they put their propaganda in our faces, we know better than to believe what they say, And that's the note that I want to end on, man. I want to thank you guys for listening to me. Another video. I'm going to probably drop another one soon, man. And I hope you guys could find opportunity to learn and to gain and to grow in knowledge and wisdom and understanding from the videos that I make. Please keep continuing to pray to God, man, consistently, every day. Don't miss a day, all right? Pray to Him and tell Him that you're grateful for the food that you were able to eat, the fact that you're able to come home to a roof over your head, you're able to sleep on a comfortable bed, you're able to see your parents and your loved ones another day, be grateful for that. All right, peace, man, I'm gone.